How much did you plan on doing, and what order are we doing this in? Is really the question.
Which one do you have?
Because I don't have like, you know what? It's the most topical.
I was gonna say
No.
okay,
It's the most topical because it's the newest one.
Okay,
Let's
you know what?
let's get some smashy pumpies.
Fine, let's talk about the smashy puppies. Hi, I'm Chris.
And I'm Jeff, and welcome to the Sound Judgment Podcast,
where every episode we'll be discussing all of the important musical topics, from reviews to which member of Motley Crue is the most vile.
I'm gonna judge the officials. I'm gonna judge all the judges. It's gonna take you people years to recover from all my opinions. Yeah, let's talk about smashy puppies.
Let's talk about Skinny Puppy. Aghori Mhori Mei. I have it written as the word A, then Gory, and then Mori, and then May, because that's how Billy Corgan told me to pronounce it.
Okay, I am glad you said that, because I was literally gonna start this with for the record, I will make no promises on how I pronounce the names of certain songs, because as we all know, Mr. William Corgan is really good at taking words and then saying them not the way you think they should be said. For example, there's the one, oh, hold on. How does he say it? Does he pronounce it machina? Right?
Yeah.
Is that how he does it?
Yeah, I think so.
So, like, what I think most people would look at that word and, based on other contexts, would think it's machina. He calls it machina. So we're looking at Aghori Mhori Mei, I think is how it's said.
There's an actual video of him making sure you know how to pronounce it, so don't worry.
Oh, I actually, of all things, didn't see that. Go figure.
There's like a video, and it's just called Billy Corgan pronounces the new album title or something. He's like, I know there's gonna be people who ask me what the album title's called, and then he like mispronounces it a bunch of times himself, and he's like, and it's called Aghori Mhori Mei. So now it's called Aghori Mhori Mei. I'll put a little clip of Billy Corgan saying it here.
Okay. Well, so
I'll tell you what. Nothing scares me more than a new Smashing Pumpkin records. Hold on, let me flip my notes over.
Well,
with a pretentious album title.
Really? Okay. Let's clear the air first. We had previously talked about Smashing Pumpkins fairly in depth when we covered the 3-part space rock opera, whatever it is, called Autumn, that was released between November of 2022 and, what was it, April of 23, right?
Yeah.
So we've talked quite a bit about Smashing Pumpkins, so I do not need to ask you what your history with the band is or whatever. We both know where we stand, but let's just clear this out. General rule, I think Smashing Pumpkins are one of those artists who have a good handful of great songs, and then everything else is just complete and utter trash. It is either like, this song is brilliant, or I never want to hear this again. And there is almost no middle ground with the Smashing Pumpkins. I kind of blindsided you, and then I obviously reeled it back a bit when we reviewed Autumn by saying I actually really like a good bit of it. And I still stand by that. There's a few tracks on there that I genuinely think are really good. The problem is that Mr. Billy Corgan is absolutely insufferable.
It's true. It's real true.
He is one of the most irritating people to listen to that I've ever heard. And like the masochist that I am, I had to listen to even more interviews with him. Not just Aghori Mhori Mei, but I listened to more interviews with him from the past month, because this album was also only announced like a few weeks before it released.
2 weeks.
Yeah, so we didn't have a whole lot of time to like prepare ourselves. And so I did spend way too much time listening to interviews and hating everything about it.
For the record, I I completely am for people going and listening to more Billy Corgan interviews because it'll make our show look much better in comparison.
You're not wrong. So, but let's not forget. Let's just let's call it out. Not super long ago, Smashing Pumpkins were holding auditions for what you were calling the new former guitar player of the band.
Yeah, and I gotta say, that's really interesting because Billy Corgan, made sure everyone knew that this was going to be a guitar-driven rock album, in the same vein as like Siamese Dream or Melancholy, right? And that old school fans should be ready for a great guitar-driven album featuring our friends James Ihop and Jimmy Chamberpot and Billy Corgan and the new guitarist, who, never mind, the new guitarist isn't on this record.
I was just gonna say, so they go ahead, they do this whole ordeal looking for a new member, and they hire Kiki Wong, who, I mean, in all fairness, is just absolutely phenomenal. I mean, she really is. But she is a live member only. The band on record is Billy Corgan doing vocals, guitars, keyboards, bass, and whatever else. James Iha, again, guitar, bass, all that others, again, just a mixture of things. And Jimmy Chamberlin on drums. And
anyone else is considered a featured member.
Katie Cole on backing vocals. I don't even know what tracks or whatever. I just know that she is on the album. She is listed as additional personnel. But basically, this is a 3-piece band, just double tracking and triple tracking, just whatever. So it's 3 people. All right. Christopher.
Yeah.
So in one of the interviews I listened to was an interview by Loudwire. Mr. Billy Corgi was explaining that the original intent was they were aiming for their older sound. Again, as you were saying, it's a very guitar driven album. I'm not gonna lie, it definitely is. They were aiming for the older sound, and he was originally, I guess, thinking like Gish, Siamese Dream, or Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness. And as they got into the writing and recording process, it really ended up being more along the lines of like the Machina era from 2000, the early 2000s. It's a lot heavier and grittier, but it is definitely still back to basics. This is not one of their like synth albums. But Chris, do you know who else released an album on the same day that also went back to their sound from about 20 years ago?
Who's that?
Jack White.
Wow.
Jack White released an album. It has no official title, so it's just sort of called No Name. And it really is like this old, gritty, bluesy garage rock style, like almost like a White Stripes kind of thing. And it's a much better album than Aghori Mhori Mei, so I'm going to talk about that instead.
I was going to say, is the fucking bit that you wrote a review for the new Jack White album instead of the new Smashing Pumpkin album?
So listen. I seriously have been listening to No Name so much over the past few days. It is the best thing Jack White has done probably since the album Elephant, right? The White Stripes album. It really is. So Jack White, I have this weird, like, love-hate thing for. On one hand, back in the day, and he came out, like, at the right time. Like, I was a young, brand new, budding guitar player, and he was this guy who was like, you know what? No, I'm gonna buy, like, this cheap, awful, shitty equipment, and I'm just gonna do cool stuff with it, and it's gonna be awesome. And I'm like, yeah, hell yeah, like, I love this, and I was all on board. I used to own a handful of like these 1960s little Silvertone amps, and I just loved his like I don't care attitude, right? And then
I used to love his attitude that he didn't really care if people thought that he was dating his sister.
That's a whole other thing, and I could so no. So he didn't care that they told everybody that they were siblings. Like that was their whole thing. Even going back to like the 90s when they were still like in Detroit, there's like video of him introducing her as his sister, despite the fact that they were married at that point, and then they got divorced and they continued releasing albums even though they were divorced. So they were married, divorced, told everybody they were siblings, continued to work together, and he took her last name. His last name was not White. When they got married, he changed his last name to hers, and I think that's awesome. But you know what else is awesome?
Do you think he was in it for the name? Do you think the whole reason was because he knew Jack White is a name that will bring in money, especially when placed against the contrast of a Jack Black?
I don't I don't think that's the case, but I kind of like the idea. But no, so this new album, again, also kind of came out without a whole lot of fanfare, right? Like no singles coming out or anything previously. Absolutely, like no talk. Just
well, I mean,
boom, here's an album.
If Jack White tells you he's putting out an album, then that's you're just gotta be happy he didn't put the record in like a couch and send it out or something.
I mean, that's true too. But see, okay, so that's where my love-hate relationship. Thank you, you reminded me. That's where my love-hate relationship with Jack White comes from. He used to be like the pioneer of I don't care, I make do with what I have kind of garage rock guitar player. And he was also still pretty good, right? Like he was doing some fun and cool, interesting things. But then at some point, he went from, ooh, I love this weird old shitty equipment to like, ooh, I love these amps that cost thousands of dollars. And I have this import Japanese guitar that I play. And his performance of the Star Spangled Banner at some sporting event. Do you know this recording?
No.
Have I made you listen to this? Okay. Imagine SpongeBob music, but it's playing the melody to the Star Spangled Banner.
I love it.
Okay. It is one of the worst things I have ever heard, right? Like there's that line. And I just had this conversation with someone else the other day. Not about this. We were talking about food. It was, are there any foods that you don't like and you honestly can't even understand how other people do, right? Like I hate olives, but I can get it. I get that some people really like the super salty bitterness of them. I just don't. I listened to this recording of the Star Spangled Banner and I genuinely cannot understand the comments who are praising it. It is one of the most fucking terrible things I have ever heard. And I, for quite a few years now, had basically written Jack White off as just like, I hate everything he's done. I don't like a lot of his music. He like went too far in some other direction. No. This album went back to everything I love about Jack White. So he has a track called It's Rough on Rats, If You're Asking, which first off just feels like a Jack White title. It kind of gave me a feels of a very early White Stripes song called I Think I Smell a Rat, which was just fun. I don't know why he has a thing for rats, but he has a thing for rats. It has this guitar solo in it that feels almost like if Tom Morello tried playing with actual melody and not just like squeaking, but it is a lot of squeaking. It's a good time. There's a song called Underground, which starts with this really cute, like vibey tremolo guitar tone. Something like straight out of like the late 50s or early 60s, I guess. And then, of course, it jumps into like this very cliche Jack White octave doubler thing that he does with the melody. He has bits and pieces where he'll sing along with the melody, but then the melody will repeat. Or I'm sorry, like he'll play the melody while he's singing it. I said that poorly. So he's playing the same melody as he's singing it. And then the second time he repeats, the last note, like he'll sing like the harmony to it. Oh, it's so good. It is so brilliant. Chris, I'm kidding. Let's actually talk about Smashing Pumpkins.
Man, I was about to get into like that time that like Jack White released that record that you needed like a 5-speed record player and the ability to play a record backwards, like just to listen to the whole thing. Do you know what I'm talking about?
We can talk about Jack White more if you want to.
But do you know what I'm talking about?
I do. I remember. I don't remember the details, but I remember there was like a thing.
The record had like 2 different starting grooves, so that like the intro rant or whatever, like it started off with like a spoken word thing or whatever, I think, and it like depending on which groove you put it in, it would be different.
I remember it being a thing, but I don't remember the details because obviously I don't have it.
He's that like a different kind of pretentious piece of shit.
That was during an era of like I hate everything this guy's doing, right? Like to me, that is the complete opposite of what I thought he was. Like when he came out again, his whole thing felt like anyone can do this and anyone can make this kind of music and anyone can be good. and then he did shit like that, and I'm like, that is the complete opposite of accessible, right? Like, that's like, what the hell are you doing? Like, that's such a what's that quote? If you don't die a hero, you live long enough to become the villain or whatever. Like, that's how I felt.
How about you spend so much time thinking about whether or not you could, you didn't think about whether or not you should?
You know what? That's also completely accurate. Speaking of whether or not you could or should, Chris, I'm just postponing talking about Smashing Pumpkins here.
All right. Well, so I'll tell you what. I'll go through my notes if you want, but
no. So, listen. So in the apartment complex, right?
Yeah.
In the laundry room, there's this table that everyone in the area just uses if you're like getting rid of something that someone else might use. People leave canned foods there. People leave clothes there all the time. Whatever.
Yeah.
And it's just like, hey, if anyone needs this, here you go, take it. And then, like, if it sits there for too long, it just gets thrown out.
Yeah.
Someone just today left this General Electric, like, cassette deck from the 80s.
Yeah.
It's a model number 3-5152A, just in case anyone cares. And it was just sitting there, and I'm thinking, like, surely I'm the only one who cares about this. So I had to grab it, and I just put some batteries in it. And Chris, you will not believe this, but it works beautifully. Incredible.
That's beautiful.
Anyway, Smashing Pumpkins. All right,
smashy pumpies.
Anyway, on the new Jack White album, there's a track called "Number One with a Bullet," and I want you to do a side-by-side test. You don't need to do it right this second, but I want you to do it between "Number One with a Bullet" by Jack White versus the song "Politician" by Cream. I feel like this is one of those things that if we were still in that weird, remember that era where everyone was suing everyone else over like copyright infringement or whatever?
Yeah.
If we were still in like that era, I feel like this could be a lawsuit waiting to happen. Anyway.
Well, I'll tell you what, Jeff, I'll be your number one with a bullet with butterfly wings. So do you have any Smashing Pumpkins notes, or do you?
No, I do. I'm just being a smartass.
I understand. I mean,
I'm just being a smartass because it also was just funny that it was 2 albums, throwback styles that came out on the same day. It was just too perfect. Also, the Jack White album is significantly better. No, okay. Give credit where credit is due. This Smashing Pumpkins album, he wasn't lying when Mr. Billy Corgi said it was going to be a guitar-driven album. It really is, and quite frankly, it has some pretty badass riffs in it.
Some of it does sound like that period of snagging pinpoints that we're talking about, that period of like Chernobyl Rick, you know. I didn't check my notes. I'm sorry. I didn't do any proofreading on these notes because Billy Corgan put this album out in 2 weeks, so I put as much effort into my notes. I put all of my effort into the autumn review, so I didn't even bother proofreading. There was nothing on this album that I really wanted to go back to when it was over. It has its moments where it gets heavier, and it has its moments where he's always played around with string sections and piano sections and synths. But for the most part, it's much more concise and straightforward than Autumn, and therefore it actually resembles something like a Smashing Pumpkins album from back in the day.
It actually feels like an album with songs that maybe not necessarily me, but I can absolutely understand. Some of these are going to be songs that people actually keep going back to.
I could understand why a Serbian Pinata fan would enjoy this album.
I'm sorry, a Serbian Pinata fan? What the hell did you just say?
Sorry, I think I just kept putting S and then letting auto finish it, and then P and then let auto finish putting it. So whatever. I went to go put Smashing Pumpkins. It's just Serbian Pinata.
Smashing Pumpkins. I thought that was the name of the song because there is that one song called I'm sorry, Sig Homie, Sigomi. Symphony?
I don't know. Some of the words
Track 3.
Some of the words on this album looked like they were about to be like a Christian concept album, and it got me a little scared. You got Eden, you got Pentagrams, you got Pentecost. Goeth the Fall. I think that's a biblical reference.
Well, I think there are absolutely biblical references in this.
But it's not like he did another goddamn 3-disc fucking concept album.
No, and as far as I am aware, this album
through line that I'm aware of.
This album is also not apparently pseudo autobiographical like Autumn was, where Billy Corgan put himself as the character of a a rock star who was wished away and sent to outer space prison where he lived in like a cryo freeze chamber or something until somebody decided that he was important enough that he could change the world, so they brought him back. Something like that was the plot of Autumn.
I'll tell you what, just based on the fact that this isn't like an overthought, overbloated piece of shit, this ended up being the best Smashing Pumpkins record in a long time.
You know what? Yes.
I'm not saying that's a high standard. Agree.
It's not great, but this is a perfect example. I'm going to use my food analogy again. This album is olives. I don't like this album, but I will get to my main reason why in a second. I don't like this, but this album is olives in that I can see why other people might. Whereas Autumn, I find so obnoxiously pretentious, I cannot stand it. Autumn was the way I also look at Sleep Token, right? Which is the whole, like, how important is authorial intent thing. Because Autumn, if you take a couple of those songs out of context, I thought were really good songs. But as soon as I remembered that they're about space prison Billy Corgan coming back to save the planet or something, I'm totally taken out of it. Here's my biggest issue with this, and it is my biggest issue with Smashing Pumpkins in general. The lyrics don't feel like they're trying to be cryptic. They feel like they're just unfinished. I listen and I read to Smashing Pumpkins lyrics, and all I can think is, this sounds like a rough draft. Like, you have the pieces here. You have, like, references in place, and you have, like, your name dropping, and you're referencing things, and it's there, but you never went back and, like, added more to it. Like, it needs footnotes. And I find that so completely unlistenable, because his voice also stands out so much too. This isn't like when I'm listening to if you're listening to like black metal or who was that band, Horrendous?
Yeah.
Right? Where I was making fun of the lyrics for being like, they're soundscapes. Like, they paint a picture, but they're not really saying a whole lot specifically. Those are great because those voices are also kind of buried. They are just part of the overall wall of sound. Billy's voice is so front and center and in your face on this album that you can't pretend that the lyrics are just painting a picture. You hear every word in that weird, goofy, whiny voice of his, and they don't make any goddamn sense.
Well, I gotta say, if there's one thing that I learned from this album, it's that Billy Corgan has never been to Kathmandu.
Thank you. Can we talk about Billy's voice for a second here?
I've never been to Kathmandu.
Thank you. Maybe this is just me, or maybe I'm just being a jerk. I do not know if this is like a thing other people are noticing or thinking about. Billy Corgan, I mean, mind you, the man is 57 years old.
I can't believe at 57 and with the amount of money that he has, he was never been to Kathmandu.
I hate you. I feel like his voice has lost a lot of dynamic range. I feel like he used to have like a couple voices, so to speak, right? The way he said the world is a vampire was not the way he said, despite all my rage, I am still just a rat in a cage. Those were two different voices, and I feel like we don't have those anymore.
He had 3 before, and now he has 2.
Yeah, well, I don't even know if he has 2. To me, this all very, very much sounds the same. He has the single whiny voice. There is no strong, raspy, whiny voice.
Oh, I guess he doesn't really do the on this album.
No, it's gone, and I am going to attribute that to potentially aging, which I'm not going to fault him on, but I will say that I think it's almost a shame that this album didn't come out when he had more of that force and rasp in his voice, because I think that could have made a lot of these songs sound like so much more intense. I mean, with how heavy, like the song Sycorax, which, first off, give credit where it's due. That's a fun name. Not gonna lie. It's clever and I like it. Like, that's a badass song. And I think that would be really great if the voice was just a little more in there.
Wow, you really got in there.
But instead it's just whiny, but it's loud. It's not strong, it's just loud.
Well, that's what the Smashing Pumpkins are, is loud. If nothing else, sometimes. When they're loud.
I mean, but it's not loud, like, organically. It's loud just because he's cranked up in the mix.
Well, you know, I'd love
Chris,
to...
It really wasn't that good.
I'd love to believe that maybe... You're right. It wasn't. But I'd love to believe that maybe Billy Corgan dropped the pretense and tried to get back in touch with reality, and that releasing a modestly good, if not his most memorable work, would be enough for him. But I'm sure it won't. I'm sure he'll happily let us know in a couple weeks that he deserves to be revered, and that this
was the best album of the 2020s, and
how it's, you know, the greatest piece of thing to whatever grace God's gray earth. But it's okay at best, I would say.
It is okay. This is an album that I am not mad about, though.
Oh no, how the fuck can I be mad when the fucking last album was 3 discs?
I did not leave this album annoyed. I did leave the interviews annoyed, as always, but I did not leave this album being annoyed. It is totally competent and listenable, and it's enjoyable at times, but it's not something I'm ever going to go back to. But if I were already a bigger Smashing Pumpkins fan, I could probably accept that this was a good time. Like, if I were a bigger fan in general, I would like this more.
And if you are a Smashing Pumpkins fan, there is help out there. You can reach out to local hotlines.
No, please do not reach out to a hotline for help for being a Smashing Pumpkins fan.
If you call them, they will talk you through. It's Billy Corgan therapy. They'll get you through the interviews. If you thought I was going to ignore the fact, Jeff, that the last song is a piece of shit, don't worry. I'm going to acknowledge it.
Are you?
Because Billy Corgan wanted to write a prog rock ballad ending. And he did this percussive chorus thing that he keeps going back to, and it really doesn't seem to do anything with the other parts of the song, which are much softer.
I'm going to be completely honest with you. I don't even remember what the last song sounds like off the top of my head, and I did not write a single thing about it, so I will take your word for it.
He's never been to Kathmandu.
Yeah, I remember that. I know the line you're referencing, but like I didn't write anything else about it.
That's from a different song anyway.
Oh, see, I don't remember that. Like, that's the thing. Like, I remember the line. I don't know what song was that from.
I think it's called "I've Never Been to Kathmandu." It's from Who Goes There. Anyway, I'm giving this. What's my scale? 10. 4. I'll give this 4 Kathmandus out of 10.
Okay, I was gonna do the same. I mean, so I was gonna do the same. 2 out of 5, 4 out of 10, however you want to write that. Yeah, absolutely.
Simplification right there.
Do we want to move on to more old people?
From one conspiracy nut to another. Anvil, uno und unico.
I'm sorry, yeah, not old people. We wanted to move on to more crazy people. I said the wrong thing. I'm sorry. Old people is the other stuff.
They are kind of old.
Yeah, but that's not. But they're not.
They do not qualify for our cutoff for old dudes rockin', which we might get to later.
Don't they? They don't qualify?
Actually, maybe they do.
I didn't think to.
Hold on, let's put Anvil through the old man test. Old dudes rockin'.
Okay,
test.
So for the record, if you've listened to us ever before, you are aware that we use the phrase "old dudes rockin'" referring to bands with the members that are older, and I decided I'm trying to find a specific cutoff. What qualifies as old dudes rockin'? In our current work is at least 2 members of the band need to be 55 years or older. We are using that based on that is when you can get the senior discount at most McDonald's. So according to McDonald's,
if they can be on tour and 2 members get a senior discount,
yes,
at McDonald's next to the venue, then they are old dudes rockin'.
And of course, there's exceptions. Like if it's, one member and a revolving door of people, that one member's who I care about.
Like, right? Pentagram has to be old dudes rockin', because there's no way that Bobby Liebling can afford anything other than a Big Mac on a senior discount with all of the fines and things he's probably got to pay for beating his mother up. 2 members of Anvil are over 65. So yes, they do get the senior
Okay, so they do qualify. They qualify as old dude rockin', but more importantly, they're crazy dude rockin'. Christopher, what was the last album of theirs we listened to?
Well, I was about to say, is Anvil our first return review?
Well, I mean, we literally just returned to
the Smashing Pumpkins. Is Anvil our second return review?
Are they? There's no way. No. There's no way.
Because we skipped Impact is Imminent from 2022, ladies and gentlemen. But we first talked about Anvil in 2020 with their Legal at Last album, which, if I recall correctly, we agreed was pretty okay, but had some weird opinions on chemtrails.
Yes, it was okay, but we were both a little weirded out by the conspiracy theories that were being thrown around in chemtrails. And the fact that the album is called Legal at Last, and the album cover is an angel smoking a bong shaped like an anvil.
An anvil-shaped bong.
So, like, I'm just basically not entirely sure what this man's, like... I'm not trying to get political here, but I don't understand what his leanings are. I don't really understand what's going on. He wants marijuana legalized, and he believes in chemtrails. I think he might be smoking a little too much.
Well, the boys are back, and they got more weird things to say.
They sure released an album called One and Only, and just to give a couple names of songs here, we have Fight for Your Rights. Iffy on that one on its own, not a bad title, but it does make me worry because you know he's going somewhere. There's a track called Truth is Dying. That's upsetting and discouraging. There's a track called World of Fools, also very discouraging. And of course, Condemned Liberty, which, yeah, I was a little worried even before I listened to a single note, knowing that this man talked a little too long about chemtrails. Christopher, where do you...
I gotta say, if you are worried about that kind of thing, I'm not saying that there isn't any political stuff on this album. I thought it was pretty unspecific until the last few songs, where he says cancel culture is an evil vulture. By the way, the lyrics on this album were written in crayon.
No. The lyrics on this album were written by Jaden Smith in, like, the early 2010s when he was on Twitter, right? Remember when Jaden Smith went on that rampage of, like, all of his tweets were just the dumbest shit you've ever heard?
Yeah.
Do you remember, the biggest flex anyone will ever have is dying? Or, how can mirrors be real if our eyes aren't real? Or, if everybody in the world dropped out of school, we would have much more intelligent society.
Well, I'll tell you what.
Or how about make your dreams come true is what you do. Loving it too, through and through. Except that's actually an Anvil lyric. That man's in his 60s who wrote that.
That's true. I would actually argue that the Jaden Smith ones are better written. He didn't rhyme rules with fools nearly as much. Take a shot every time rules is rhymed with fools on this album and you will die, even if it's on water. But here's the thing is I thought most of it was less political and more old man yells at clouds.
It was very much old man yells at clouds, because those clouds are made of chemtrails.
True.
Just saying. No, it really was. Okay, so
for an example, Gold and Diamonds, I think, is a really good example of a song that's kind of political. It's not really a conspiracy that diamonds are, like, a big scam, but also it's just an old man yelling at the clouds here. He's just yelling about diamonds, and we all know, and we don't care.
Okay, so actually, that's one of the specific songs that I pointed out. I'm going to quote it here real quick. The hunt for precious metals began ages ago. The value it holds in possession, only the wealthy know. They discovered a special substance, the hardest known to man. They called it a diamond and set the price as high as they can. This is just like a 13-year-old has their first taste of, like, reading communist posts on some blog, and this is their first rant at, like, anti-capitalism. This man isn't in his 60s. This man is 13.
You know, they say that rock and rollers never age, but maybe they should go past 18.
this is not an old man yelling at clouds. This is a tween yelling at clouds is what this is. Because like I don't disagree. I have very strong opinions on diamonds in many, many ways. And then I'm not writing this about it though.
And then another one is Fight for Your Rights, which as you acknowledged, that could put up, you know, a little exclamation point. But
I was a little worried.
It turns out that it's about like copyright laws, which we all know copyright laws suck. We all know.
It was actually totally fine, but I see the name and I know that this guy is potentially buying into some weird conspiracies. This guy is definitely easily influenced in some strange ways. Again, I think he might just spend a little too much time with his bong.
He might.
And he needs to get off of Reddit and Twitter. And Tumblr and everywhere else. He needs to go touch some grass, not that kind of grass, like real grass.
Yeah, the other grass, yes.
Yeah, the other grass. Yeah, so when I saw Fight for Your Rights, I was a little worried, like, oh no, like don't do this to me, man. But no, it was legitimate. I agree with him. And the whole album is pretty competent, right? Like they're not a bad band. They're not incredible in any real way, but they're solid. Like they're a solid band.
They are a solid band in terms of like all the music on all the backing music on this. Yeah.
But they are definitely, I think I mentioned this to you not too long ago. The idea of if we were to make, God, I hate myself for categorizing things like this. But if you were to make like tiers, right? There's a reason that the legendary bands are the legendary bands, and then there's bands who are like a little, they're like the level down, right? It's like, oh yeah, they were really good. I really like a lot of what they did. But like, there's just so obviously some things missing, right? They didn't take it to that next level. And Anvil, I think, is so perfectly fit, just like one tier down. They're a solid band. I have no doubt they have probably been a fun live band their entire career. But there's just some lacking stuff going on in here.
They don't have that certain something.
Yeah, like critical thinking skills.
Yeah. Yeah, you know. Man, I'll tell you what, that opening track, it just sounds like someone called them derivative and they took that real personally.
I mean,
because it's just
well, that's the problem.
It's like they're sarcastically trying to convince me that originality is overvalued in rock music, a genre that every couple years has another breakout band that sounds like Led Zeppelin or AC/DC. Or metal, where one of the most popular bands is Ghost, which is frequently compared to Blue Oyster Cult, Black Sabbath, and Scooby-Doo chase music. Originality is king, or whatever the fuck they said. So when
Truth is dying.
Started, did you start singing the first verse of Man on the Silver Mountain?
Wait, what? Oh my god. That's real funny. No, I didn't. Nice catch though. That's funny.
You're welcome.
Chris, I'll be honest, I don't actually have a ton to say about this though. It's a really solid, it's a pretty fun hard rock heavy metal album. But I have the exact same complaint with this as I had with Aghori Mhori Mei, which is just that like the lyrics are so in your face. And some of the lyrics are just so bad that it's really hard to like it's really hard to like not just be constantly aware of how bad they are.
I have unfortunately I believe the word of the day tonight is going to be unremarkable.
I mean, that's
it's
okay.
just an unremarkable album. It's not bad, but you know, there's no reason to listen to this over metal on metal.
Chris, but don't you realize with open eyes, I don't want to hear the lies. How can mirrors be real if our eyes aren't real?
How can mirrors be real if our ears aren't real?
You know what, Jaden Smith? That would have even been a better tweet, because it makes even less sense. But at least it, like, has a better flow to it. Yeah, you know what? The word of the night is unremarkable. I think that's valid. Anvil, I mean, again, Anvil was fun. On my scale of out of 5, I'd give it a 3.
Sure, I'll give it one more than Billy. I'll give it one more than Billy.
Yeah, it was a decent time. The lyrics are dumb, but at least I don't find the voice kind of annoying. And at least there's no songs about chemtrails. But, like, I also will probably never come back to at least some of these songs. Like, I will actively turn off the song Truth is Dying. I don't even know what exactly, like, okay, so, you know, it's the proliferation of misinformation obliterating all that's true. But there's no...
It's one of those things where it's like, it's almost saying a political statement, but it's not taking a stand on one side or the other.
Yes, thank you.
So that everyone can get riled up that, like, yes, politicians do lie, but you're not putting a direct face to it.
Yes. And I not that I want them to be like a blank, wow.
I almost think that's copping out even harder.
Yes, I was saying, I don't want them to be a blatant political band, but to me it's like, either do it or don't.
Yeah.
Right? Like, this is the most politician metal album possible, in that it's just sitting on the fence.
Yeah.
But it's fun. But I'll give it credit for what it, you know, again, credit where credit is due. It's fun. They're a solid hard rock band, man. You can't... I can't say I didn't have, like, fun blasting this down the highway.
Yeah.
But it's just dumb.
Yeah. No, just do it with Metal on Metal next time. Also,
yeah.
Put on Runaway and just think it's been a long time since I rock and rolled now.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, well, they're fairly derivative riffs. I mean, they're fun, they're solid, they sound good. It seems well mixed. But it's nothing. Again, there's nothing here that's blowing me away. But it was a fun time. I can't be mad.
You know, people are waiting for a brand new craze. You know, individuality is the way to stand out. Deriving something new is what it's about. Never get far doing the same old thing. Groundbreaking is always king.
Are you good?
I must be the one and only. I must be the one that's unique.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Christopher?
Yeah?
Do you have any more thoughts on either Anvil or Smashy Pumpies?
Speaking of things that sound like Blue Oyster Cult, let's talk about Blue Oyster Cult.
Oh, we're just gonna jump into it all together right now.
Let's just fucking power through them. Fuck it.
Let's just power through it. Are we really... This feels like a 2020 episode where we're gonna talk about 4 albums in one sitting, aren't we?
Possibly, but we're not even at an hour yet.
That's what I mean, though. Like, are we really doing
like
this?
Before, when we did it in 2020, the episodes would be 2 hours long, and we've covered half of them, and it hasn't even been an hour.
That's because there's not a whole lot to say. We luckily picked a few albums that just aren't... Like, the word of the night is unremarkable. Speaking of unremarkable, Christopher.
Let's talk about Blue Oyster Cult, Spooky Scary Skeletons.
Tell me a little bit about Ghost Stories Blue Oyster Cult, because this actually is a new album, but, like, it's not a new album.
Calling it a new album is a little disingenuous, even though it kind of is. The album is Blue Oyster Cult's, I guess, apparent farewell parting gift to the concept of releasing a new album. Because they said they don't really plan on working on new music, and considering the last album that they released, Simple Remains in 2020, was their first since 2001, and they've only released 4 since 1988, I believe them. I don't think they're interested in putting out new music.
No,
so rather than a collection of new songs, what they gave us is an album composed of songs that were written and recorded for past albums and didn't make the final cut. And if that sounds like you're getting an album of outtakes, then don't worry, you're actually getting an album of outtakes that were polished with AI.
I was gonna say, I was hoping you would add in that last little bit there. As if you're not already getting an album of B-sides that didn't make the cut. They were also artificially polished. Christopher.
As one would expect, this doesn't leave a lot of absolute must-hears. Since, you know, the best songs made it to the album.
This sure sounds like all of the songs on Blue Oyster Cult albums that I already skip. Just saying.
As a fan of the band, I think it's interesting to hear some of this stuff. As a fan of goofy 70s rock, I think some of the songs are fun.
Some of it is fun.
I think We've Got to Get Out of This Place would have been my favorite filler song on any other Blue Oyster Cult album.
You know what? Yeah, okay, I can actually agree with that. So this isn't, it's not horrible. Like, this isn't horrible in any way, shape, or form.
If you want to look at it as in it is what it is, I would say it's actually somewhat good.
And again, this is a perfect example of if you are a fan of the band, you know what? This is pretty cool. Right? Yeah. And I'm a moderate fan of the band. I am not a big fan of the band, but I'm a moderate fan of the band. I respect that they were incredibly talented and they wrote quite a handful of really cool songs. But like, okay, let's look at track number 2. It's called Cherry. This was, supposedly, written and recorded in the 70s. You Could Have Fooled Me. It sounds like it was recorded in 1958 by Bill Haley in the Comets. This is such a early days of rock and roll sounding song. And you know what? It's fun. It was a damn good time. I was really excited when I listened to this track. But it's really nothing special.
No.
It's nothing incredible. It's not blowing anyone's mind. There's a couple covers on here which I thought was interesting. Kick Out the Jams, the MC5 song, was covered here. Now, in all fairness, it's a pretty straightforward cover, right? Like, it's not a note-for-note cover, but they didn't take a whole lot of creative liberties.
Right.
It's a band covering Kick Out the Jams. Is it a good time? Yeah, it is. If it weren't recorded in the 70s, I would accuse them of doing that thing where you go, oh, I want to record a cover from this old band that people have forgotten. Let me pick the one song of theirs that people know. Because that's like how that works, right?
Yeah.
Like if someone covers some like semi-obscure artist, you're going to cover like the one popular song people remember. I don't know what it was like when they decided to cover Kick Out the Jams. It might have been the only song by MC5 that people knew, like it is now. As far as I'm aware, anyone who knows the MC5, there's a good chance all you know is that one song, unless you're like an actual fan. I don't know what the thought process was. It's a fun, solid cover. There's If I Fell, which is a Beatles song, which is unfortunately also just like the recording. I love the song If I Fell by the Beatles. The problem is, I love the song as recorded on the Across the Universe soundtrack. I do not love the original recording off of, I want to say, Hard Day's Night. It's just kind of dull. It almost feels like it moves too fast. It feels like If I Fell needed to be a slower, almost more sultry sounding ballad, and it's just not. It's like almost too upbeat, and they sound almost too happy to be singing it. And the Blue Oyster Cult cover is like basically note for note the original song. It's a huge shame because I think there was potential for them to do something really, really great with what is potentially a really, really great song. Any standout tracks to you?
I mean, how do you pick standout tracks on an album as solidly mid as this? I think We Gotta Get Out of This Place is probably one. I don't know. That might be it.
Well, and that's all. It was okay. Enough. That's another cover. Like that's the song by, is that the Animals originally, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so I'm gonna be real. My favorite song on here, Ghost Stories, added one more song to the Blue Oyster Cult repertoire that I actually am going to come back to, and that is the song Don't Come Running to Me.
Okay.
I think that song, first off, has the greatest intro I've heard in a hot minute. It has this like super chill, like arpeggiated chords in the keyboards, and then just boom, it explodes with the guitars and the voice. Oh god, it's so good. It's such a cool song. I don't know what album that was supposed to be on, but I'm mad it didn't make the cut back then because it deserved it.
Okay.
But now I have a question for you. Do you happen to know when they say it was like cleaned up by AI? Do you know what all that entailed? What all that did?
I'm not sure.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you knew any details or not. I could not find anything about it. I am guessing they did kind of like what the Beatles did with that John Lennon track, where they just took like a dusty old tape and, it cleaned it, so to speak, right? Which, if that's the case, I'm certainly not mad about it. I think that is a great use of AI being able to do things like that. I'm just not sure if that's actually what they did.
From what I understand is...
Okay, well, Spooky Scary Skeletons by Blue Oyster Cult is also going in the camp, as the other albums are, of if you're a fan of this band, this is probably really cool, and I'm happy for you. Not a whole lot I'm going to come back to. I will probably never listen to it again in its entirety, but I'm glad I listened to it once, and I'm glad I found at least one really cool song on it.
Not bad. Yet again, the word comes up unremarkable, but I mean, I like Blue Oyster Cult, and I thought there were a couple things on here that were pretty cool. I don't know if I'll ever come back to the full album. I might give it one more listen and then pick the top tracks off of it, put them on a playlist.
That's exactly what I already did, actually.
Yeah.
I got that song in a couple playlists and then move on.
Yeah.
I can't imagine I'll ever come back, but hey, that's fine.
Jeff, you know what color goes really well with a Blue Oyster Cult is a nice deep purple.
I cannot beve that that's the transition you came up with.
You don't like the color, the blue and purple color mix?
I cannot believe that that's the transition you came
up with.
All right,
fine. You come up with a better one.
No. All right. So, Deep Purple.
All right. Deep Purple greater than 3. Less than 3.
No. It's equals 1. It's an equal sign and then the Arabic numeral 1 by Deep Purple. It is the 23rd album by the band. Now, Deep Purple is, for me, one of those bands that I follow to, like, not an obsessive extent.
The end of the world.
But definitely more than anyone else we've talked about here.
He follows them through the desert for 7 days and for 40 years.
I am a genuine big fan of Deep Purple. At least various eras of them. Deep Purple is one of those bands that I follow who's in the band, who's playing on what album, because they have gone through 30 million lineup changes. And there was another lineup change on this album.
Yeah.
In fact, it's probably the most significant lineup change they've had in quite a while. So they
got some fresh young blood in this band.
They did. So a couple years ago, they lost their guitar player, a man named Steve Morse.
I hope they find him.
You know what I mean. I hate you. He left the band because his wife actually was suffering from cancer, and he was, doing the right thing and spending time with her. And absolutely no one in their right mind would blame him, and it all the best to him. Steve Morse is, from what I can tell, an awesome dude. He is an absolute powerhouse of a guitar player. He is in that top tier. It doesn't matter who's better than who by this point. There is no accounting. These people are just absolutely unbelievable. And Deep Purple losing Steve Morse on this album is such a huge downgrade. Is what I would say if Simon McBride weren't the best fucking rock guitar player I've heard in a long time. He is incredible.
Practically a baby at 45 in this band where everyone else is either 76 or 78.
Yes, I have never heard of this man previously. I don't really know where he came from, other than he's worked with some members of the band previously. So they lost Steve Morse, who was the longest running guitar player in the band in their history. And they replace him with this Northern Irishman who's in his 40s, who is significantly younger than the rest of the band, and he just blends in with the band so well, especially the mixture of him and keyboardist Don Airey. Not to discredit Steve Morse, but I think Simon McBride fits the sound of the rest of the band better. This is, in my, again, opinion here, where I have strong opinions on the band, this is the best Deep Purple album since, oh no, a long time. I'm gonna say probably close to 30 years.
What, better than Whoosh?
Yes. Whoosh was not a good album. Neither was 2013's Now What. Do you remember Now What?
Did I ever make you listen to that one?
I didn't know if I ever made you listen to any of it. Okay, I wasn't sure if I ever made you listen to any of it.
I do remember listening to a little bit of Infinity when that came out.
Okay, and Infinity is actually a pretty good album. Infinite. I do like Infinite. Yeah, I think that's actually a pretty good album. This is probably their best album since, I'm gonna say, Perpendicular, which actually, oddly enough, was Steve Morse's first album with them.
Yeah.
I'm thinking this is Deep Purple's best album in almost 30 years. And I'm thinking a huge part of that is thanks to the rejuvenation of having this new guy with the band who just fits so well.
It has the same thing we talked about Judas Priest earlier this year, a little bit of shot of fresh energy in this band.
Yeah, yes.
The thing that I noticed about him is that he brings out a little bit more of that prog side of Deep Purple. Like, there's still some solid rocking, but there's a lot more of that prog side than I think the last couple albums had.
There's a lot more of the, let's experiment and add a few different sections to this song.
This sounds like the band that jammed on Child in Time for 45 minutes or however long that song is.
Yeah, well, yes. This very much feels like what I imagine Deep Purple felt like back in the 70s. Except I also feel like Simon McBride doesn't have the ego that Ritchie Blackmore had.
Well,
so I think he has the skill and the similar style of writing, but he doesn't have the ego. Which, again, yeah, who does? In fact, I want to say, and I feel bad for saying this, but I think it's true. I think Ian Gillan's the weak link here.
Oh, wait, I don't want to talk about that yet. I want to talk about old dudes who are actually rocking. Because Ian Pace and Don Airey are still fucking kicking ass and taking names on this album.
Oh, without a doubt.
I don't know enough about bass to talk about Roger Glover, who I feel like he just kind of sounds like he's here. I don't know if he's the weak link. He doesn't feel like he's the weak link. He's building a foundation. He's doing what the bass needs to do. But Ian Pace, holy fuck!
Yeah. No, absolutely incredible. And these are guys in their 70s. Ian Pace currently 76. Don Airey is also 76. Roger Glover is 78 years old. Like, these guys are they're up there. They definitely qualify as old dudes rocking, and they absolutely came and they kicked ass. They're
like incredible. I said, there were 3 ages in this band: 76, 78, and 45.
Yeah, exactly. No, absolutely incredible. And I assume, and from what I can tell, Roger Glover is also really in there. But he is, I don't want to say he's buried in the mix. We're not talking Jason Newsted kind of stuff.
No. But
he's not as prominent in the mix as, Don Airey, who's playing, keys. Obviously, he's playing leads and solos. Like, he's very much noticeable. He's very front and center, at least at points. And then, of course, Ian Pace, who's just a phenomenal drummer, and from what I can tell, he still is.
Absolute beast. And I mean, the song, like the music on this album, for the most part, is very good. Everyone is completely solid the entire time. The songs have they don't like really like rip into anything, but everything's kept like a little bit fast, like mid-pace, like high mid-pace. Maybe?
Yeah, it's all I would say it's all mid-pace. None of these are like, oh my god, shred-tastic songs, but that was also never really the thing.
Well, they have their highway stars and stuff.
Yeah, like they have their moments.
Yeah, but I would say this doesn't really go like real fast or real ballady at any point. There's not a lot of extremes. The whole thing kind of picks a tempo and cruises.
Yes, and it does a damn good job.
It does a damn good job at it.
Even so, and like I am going to go back to this though. Even so, even though I am calling Mr. Ian Gillan the weakest link here, I don't want anyone to think that I mean he's awful, because he's not. But he sounds like an old man, right? He sounds like an old man.
I'm going to say something now that will not be a popular opinion.
Okay.
I do not enjoy listening to this album.
You know what? I don't actually know if that's that unpopular. I'll be honest.
I've seen a lot of people saying that they really love this album, and I think that, like I said, musically it's great. I can't fault this thing musically, but I think that listening to elderly Ian Gillan is just for an hour is just not an experience that I enjoy, and I can't boil it down to this. Like I said, objectively doesn't, but I just find current day Ian Gillan unenjoyable to listen to.
He very much has old man voice. I mean, there is no masking. He sounds like an old man.
He had old man voice like 15 years ago.
He's had old man voice for 20 years probably.
Yeah.
Which comes from the fact that he didn't take care of his voice. I mean, he was we have to remember, he was doing this in the late 60s. He was a pioneer of the styles of singing, and we all stand on the shoulders of giants. People heard the way he screamed and said, I want to do that, but I want to do it better. And they did.
I gotta say, I did say that most of the songs on here I really like, or at least musically. I really hate this opening also. I don't like it one bit.
The track "Show Me," you mean?
Yeah, I would call it ill-advised. I don't want to hear Ian Gillan do these like little vocal quirks, right? When he does the laugh thing, he sounds like Krusty the Clown. His will haunt my dreams for years, and on top of that, I don't think the music in that song is very good or very interesting, except for the bridge and solo section, which are okay. But most of the song, I would just say, is no. It's just dun 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 dun.
Yeah, it's not. I'm surprised that's the opener.
It's not Throw My Bones, but it's not good.
I really think Lazy Sod should have been the opener. Lazy Sod feels like the better opener, and I believe it was the single. Like, I think there's like a video for it and everything.
Yeah, that one, and there was another one, wasn't there?
I don't know. There's a few. Lazy Sod. Oh, you mean like single or video?
Single.
I have no idea. I don't actually follow singles.
I think Pictures of You and Portable Door were also singles with music videos, which are all just the music videos are just old dudes rocking. Yeah, they are. There's nothing fancy going on. There's nothing going on with the music video. It's just them in a white room, old dudes, very old looking, very rockin' looking.
Can I mention my favorite moment on the album?
Yeah.
And I want you to listen to just a few seconds. Go to the track number 10. It's called Now You're Talkin'. Mm-hmm. And I want you to go 55 seconds in.
I actually felt him turning into a really shitty Brian Johnson.
And it goes, I'll say it's 55 to 102. So this is a moment where, back in Ian Gillan's prime, what he's doing here is he's reaching up into like a Rio falsetto. Well, but like what he's doing, right, is he's reaching up into a reinforced falsetto. He's adding, it's a falsetto with a lot of grit, a lot of compression. And back in the day, these would have been his high screamy notes that he was famous for. He can't do that anymore though. So now he sounds
like a dying cat.
I mean, let's use the cliche answer, but like he sounds like Brian Johnson doing a worse Brian Johnson impression, right? Like, you know that video of Michael Caine doing the Michael Caine impression?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that. It's Brian Johnson doing a Brian Johnson impression, and that's what this is. It's like 5 seconds of just like... The first time I heard this track, I'm in the car, and I almost spit out my drink, and I just straight up busted out laughing. I was not expecting it to do that at all. It's so bad, but it's so funny to me. And luckily, it's also in a song that otherwise it's not one of my favorite songs, so I don't really care. But oh, it's just so beautiful. It's such a beautiful moment. Okay, so you said you were not really a fan of this.
The phrase that I want to use is that I don't enjoy listening to the album. Mostly because of listening to Old Man Ian Gillan.
Okay, I would say, is Ian Gillan the reason? Okay.
It's mostly because listening to old Ian Gillan is an unpleasant experience for me. I spend 50 minutes thinking of my own mortality when I listen to old Ian Gillan.
You know what? And I can completely understand that. He very much sounds like an old man. There's no other way to say it. He sounds like an old man.
When I get old, I hope I am more Ian Pace than Ian Gillan.
True, but if I'm Ian Gillan, I'm glad he's having fun.
Oh, yeah,
and I okay, so you said you saw a lot of people talking very highly of this album. I bet most of those people are just Deep Purple fans.
Oh, yeah, who else is listening to this?
Exactly. I don't think anyone will hear this for their first time and go, oh yeah, I want to listen to more of this. Nobody's doing that.
I don't know, man. I can understand why people like it. Don't get me wrong. In fact, I would say in many ways I do like it. I just find like listening to the whole album an unpleasant experience. I just find it kind of shocking that no one else seems to think that, I guess. Even like fans of a band, I would assume, at some point you gotta say that the new one's not good,
See, it's funny though, because I think I'm just able to listen to this in the context of accepting that this is a band who's been around since the 60s. And this is how I expect them to sound. And I think hearing such a new life in the guitar playing is just really, really awesome.
It's great. It's phenomenal. Because like I said, instrumentally, this thing's great. You wouldn't know that half of these members are
in their 70s.
In their 70s.
So this is the album of the night where I think we're very split on this one, because I really, really enjoyed this album. I have listened to this album far beyond just enough to write a review. Like, I keep going back to this album. But again, I think that, obviously I do have a bias here. Like, I am a bigger Deep Purple fan, and I am just able to accept that, yeah, Ian Gillan sounds like an old man.
As negative as I'm talking, which I'm not even sure is that negative, it has grown on me. Because when I first put on that opening track the first time, I wanted to bash my head against the wall until I stopped moving.
Oh no.
I'm not a fan of Show Me. And when you sent me that playlist of like Old Man Rocking and it opened with Show Me, I just wanted to be like, why the fuck would you use that as the first thing that you're gonna fucking kick your playlist off on? But I didn't want to give away that I didn't like the album yet.
Oh no, that's fine. No, and it's literally just because when I was making the Old Dudes Rockin' playlist,
it was what you were
the
listening
first
to.
time. It was just the first thing I was. It's the album that made me think like I should make a playlist official for that, and that's what I messaged you saying like I want like how do we do this? Like how do we define what Old Dudes Rockin' is? And I'm still not entirely sold on the 55 thing, but that's what we're going with currently.
Well, if you come up with a better idea, you let me know.
Oh, I'm working through it, because a lot of it comes down to like I'm thinking of an artist, I'm looking up band member ages and making sure they fit, and then thinking to myself like, do they feel like Old Dudes Rockin'? Because also a big factor to me is they need to be good, right?
Yeah.
It needs to be a good album to be Old Dudes Rockin'. If it's not a good album anymore, then you don't count anymore, right?
Yeah, if it's not a good album, you're not rocking.
Like, and I'm also only counting the albums released when they are that age, obviously. Master of Puppets is not Old Dudes Rockin'. They were like 22 years old or whatever.
Right.
AC/DC, sure, they might put on a great show, but I don't know if they've put out a great album since they've come of age. So I don't know if AC/DC are Old Dudes Rockin'. Right? Like, I don't know. I don't really know if they count. I need to go back and look at their albums a little more. I think I liked the album Power Up, but it's been probably 3 years since I listened to it, so I don't remember. Anyway, Deep Purple, I really enjoyed it. You didn't. Old Dudes Rockin', People Who Are Crazy, Billy Corgi, we talked about 4 albums in like just over an hour.
I'm gonna give Deep Purple an equals 1 out of equals 2, which converts to a 5 out of 10.
I hate that. Okay. I'm giving it a 4 out of 5. I really like this album.
I can understand why you would.
I really like this
album. I can't even fucking deal with your fucking, you hate partial stars. I'll give it a 3 out of 5, I guess.
I don't like partial stars. I don't like sitting on the fence. Give it a rating or don't is the way I look at it. I don't care if other people do it, but that's all
I'd give it a 3.5, but since you hate halves, I'll knock it down to a 3 out of 5.
Christopher?
Because I can't deny that there's a lot of good stuff on here. I feel unhappy listening to it.
I understand, and that's okay. I've hated albums for less. It's fine.
But I feel bad saying that because I don't hate it. It just makes me unhappy.
It just makes me unhappy.
There's 2 different things. You can like watch a movie and like it, but it makes you sad or something. You know, I feel the same way about this album, except I'm not supposed to feel sad. I'm supposed to feel rockin'. It's like watching The Crow, and you watch it and you just know, like, you're enjoying it, but you have that, like, Brandon Lee died in this movie, like, looming over your head, you know? There's just something unpleasant happening in your head in the background while this thing's going on.
No, I get it. I get you. I understand that. I really do.
I don't know if you like The Crow. Maybe that was a bad example. But
no, I do. I mean, it's been a very long time since I've seen it last, so I don't know if I'd watch it again and be like, oh my god, this is awful. At one point in time, I really loved that movie, though.
Yeah.
But it's probably been since, like, 2006 that I've watched it last. So I'm a very different person.
Do you want to have an edgy superhero night? Because I was thinking about watching The Crow and then Spawn, like the 2000s or 90s Spawn with Michael Jai White.
Yes, please. That sounds hilarious.
I think that would be way better than fucking reviewing the Smashing Pumpkins or whatever fucking garbage we do on this fucking podcast. That's where I'm gonna cut it.
Oh, did you stop recording?
No, but we can keep going if you want.
Well, I was just gonna ask, what have you been listening to? Because Christopher, I've been listening to No Name by Jack White. No, I'm kidding. I'm not doing that again.
I can't believe that you have been listening to No Name by Jack White, the newest
not
album
gonna
by
lie,
Jack
though,
and the Whites.
I really have been listening to this album. I mean, this, like, telling you right now, this is top 10 albums of this year, man. I love this album.
So here's like the thing, right?
Yeah.
I have my interests kind of go on like kicks sometimes, right? You know, I get into something a little bit a while, and then like I kind of like put it off to the side for a little bit.
Yeah.
Back to it later. I've been thinking about comics lately, right?
Oh, okay.
And I pulled out a comic that I bought years and years ago, and I just started like reading it again, right? Slain, you know?
Okay.
I don't know if you know Slain, but it's a comic book that heavily inspired one of my favorite underground bands, Lordward Slaufeg. So I've been listening to a lot of Lordward Slaufeg lately.
Okay. That I was gonna say I don't know what this is, but never mind. Yes, I do know what that is. Okay.
And while I'm reading it, I'm just like, oh, this song was referenced. Add to playlist. Oh, this thing in this song was referenced. Add to playlist.
That's okay. That's funny.
And on top of that, I've been listening to a good bit of our old friends in Dead Iron.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what really brought it on. Thought about Dead Iron last week while mowing the lawn, and I've been listening to quite a bit of it lately.
Gotcha. All right. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. They were always solid.
That's kind of it. I mean, on top of that, I've had 4 albums I've been listening to, and I talked about them tonight. But I had an answer for you this week.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that you have an answer this week.
I led you around a little bit before I got to the point, but I had an answer this week.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Is that it? Are we done?
Did you just sign off?
No.
Oh, you said you're welcome, and then I heard the Discord doo-doo-doo sound, and I was like, did you really just end it that way?